My name is Erin Callahan, and I'm 31 years old. The night my father told my grandfather he was forbidden from attending my brother's wedding, I was standing in the kitchen doorway with a half-empty wine glass in my hand and a decision forming in my chest that would take 6 months to fully bloom. "You'll stay home, Dad. That's final." I heard the words through the wall. My father's voice booming, certain. The voice of a man who'd spent 30 years in commercial real estate learning exactly how to make people smaller than him. I pressed my palm against the doorframe and waited for my grandfather to respond. For a long moment, there was nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a television in another room. Then my grandfather spoke, and his voice was so quiet I almost missed it. "Richard, please. He's my grandson. I don't care if he's the Pope. The Beckworths are flying in from Greenwich. Do you know who Charles Beckworth is? He sits on the board of 3 Fortune 500 companies. His wife is a Whitney. An actual Whitney. And you want me to seat you at the family table in that jacket you've been wearing since the Clinton administration? I could buy a new jacket." My mother's voice cut in then, sharper than my father's, but somehow worse because it arrived wrapped in sweetness. "Henry, sweetheart, it's not just the jacket. It's everything. The way you talk. The way you eat. You tell the same stories over and over. The Beckworths will think we just want this one day to be perfect. Surely you can understand that." I stepped into the living room. My grandfather was sitting in his usual chair, a worn leather recliner he'd brought with him when he moved in 5 years earlier. He was 78 years old. His hands were folded in his lap. His eyes were fixed on the floor. My father stood above him with his arms crossed. My mother perched on the arm of the sofa like a bird deciding whether to land. "Grandpa," I said, "can I get you some tea?" He looked up at me. His eyes were wet, but he wasn't crying. "Not yet." "No, thank you, sweetheart. I'm fine." "She's not talking to you, Dad. She's talking to Grandpa." My father waved a hand. "Erin, this is a private conversation." "It doesn't sound private. It sounds like you're telling Grandpa he can't come to Connor's wedding. It's a seating issue. You wouldn't understand." I walked across the room and sat down on the arm of my grandfather's chair. I put my hand on his shoulder. I could feel his bones through his shirt. He'd lost weight recently. I'd noticed, but I hadn't asked about it. I should have asked. "I understand perfectly," I said. "You're ashamed of him." My mother's face tightened. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" "Your grandfather is a wonderful man," she said, the words sliding out with the practiced ease of someone who'd said them before without ever meaning them. "But the Beckworths are important people. Charles Beckworth could help your father's business in ways you can't imagine. This wedding isn't just a wedding. It's an opportunity." "An opportunity to do what?" "Pretend Grandpa doesn't exist." "Erin." My father's voice dropped into its warning register. "Enough." "Or what? You'll ban me from the wedding too." The room went silent. My mother looked at my father. My father looked at me. My grandfather reached up and placed his hand over mine. "Don't fight on my account," he said softly. "It's fine. I'll stay home. I can watch the ceremony online. They live stream these things now, don't they?" "That's not the point, Grandpa." "I know, sweetheart. But some battles aren't worth fighting." I looked down at him. His face was calm, resigned. The face of a man who'd spent his whole life being told he wasn't quite good enough and had eventually decided to believe it. That was the moment I started making my plan. "Before I go any further, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone you love be slowly erased by the people who should cherish them most? And if you've ever stood in a room while family turned love into a transaction, go ahead and hit subscribe. Because this is the story of how my grandfather got the last word, and it was worth more than anyone at that wedding could have imagined. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Erin Callahan. I'm 31 years old. I work as a grant writer for a nonprofit in Portland, Oregon, and I've been renting the same one-bedroom apartment in the Hawthorne district for 6 years. My brother Connor is 27. He works in medical device sales and was about to marry a woman named Tessa Beckworth, whose father is indeed Charles Beckworth of the Greenwich Beckworths, a man who has his name on 3 hospital wings and a library at Yale. Connor and Tessa met at a charity gala in Boston. She was doing event coordination. He was there because my father had bought a table and needed bodies to fill it. They dated for 18 months. She said yes at a vineyard in Napa. The wedding was going to be at the Portland Art Museum, 300 guests, a string quartet, and a raw bar. The kind of wedding that gets written up in magazines. But to understand what happened, you need to understand my grandfather. Erin Callahan was born in 1945 in a small town in eastern Oregon called Burns. His father worked for the railroad. His mother took in laundry. He was the first person in his family to graduate high school, and after that he enlisted in the Navy and spent 4 years fixing radar equipment on a destroyer in the Pacific. When he got out, he used the GI Bill to get a certificate in electrical engineering. Then he got a job at Tektronix and stayed there for 38 years. He married my grandmother, Eleanor, in 1967. They bought a small house in southeast Portland, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a detached garage he converted into a workshop. They had 1 child, my father, in 1970. Eleanor died of ovarian cancer in 1989 when my father was 19. Grandpa never remarried. He just kept working, kept fixing things, kept showing up. My father, Richard Callahan, built his real estate development company from nothing, or so he always claimed. The truth, which he conveniently forgot, was that in 1998 he was drowning. A shopping center project in Gresham had gone sideways. He'd overleveraged, underestimated costs, and was facing bankruptcy. The banks were calling. The investors were threatening to sue. My parents were about to lose their house. Grandpa Henry mortgaged his home and gave my father $42,000. It was everything he had. I was 8 years old when this happened. I didn't understand the details then. But I remember my mother coming home from Grandpa's house with an envelope and a strange expression on her face, relief mixed with something else. Something that looked almost like resentment. He said it's all he can do, she told my father. 42,000. He apologized that it wasn't more. 42,000, my father repeated. That'll cover the interest payments for maybe 6 months. It's a band-aid on a bullet wound. It's what he has, Richard. It's not enough. He took the money anyway. The project eventually got finished. My father recovered. He built more projects, made more money, bought a bigger house in the West Hills with a view of Mount Hood and a kitchen imported from Italy. He started wearing tailored suits and playing golf at the Portland Golf Club. He cultivated a persona of self-made success. And somewhere along the way, he started treating Grandpa Henry like an inconvenience. It was subtle at first. Grandpa wasn't invited to dinner parties where my father's business associates would be present. When he did come to family gatherings, my mother would seat him at the far end of the table, as far from the important guests as possible. She'd speak to him in the bright, condescending tone people use with children and the elderly. Henry, would you like some more potatoes? Henry, don't forget your napkin. Henry, maybe save that story for another time. My brother Connor learned from them. By the time he was a teenager, he'd perfected the art of ignoring Grandpa entirely. He'd walk into a room, nod in Grandpa's direction, and then turn his attention to his phone or his friends or anything else. He never asked Grandpa about his life. Never sat with him. Never cared. I was the only one who did. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I drove to Grandpa's house in southeast Portland. I brought groceries. I sat in his kitchen while he made coffee, 1 sugar, splash of milk, exactly the way I liked it. We'd talk for hours. About his work at Tektronix. About my grandmother. About the garden he was trying to grow in his postage stamp backyard. About my job and my writing and my boyfriend who'd just left me for someone else and how I was learning to be okay with being alone. "You're never alone, sweetheart," he'd say. "Not really. Not as long as you've got people who see you." He saw me. He'd always seen me. He was the only person in my family who'd read every single article I'd ever written, who asked me about my projects with genuine interest, who remembered the names of my friends and my cat and my favorite author. And I saw him. I saw how he winced when he stood up too fast. I saw how he'd stopped eating as much. I saw the loneliness that pooled in the corners of his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. So when my parents told him he couldn't come to Connor's wedding, I wasn't surprised. I was furious. But fury without a plan is just noise. The next day, I called my grandfather and asked him to meet me for coffee. Not at his house, at a cafe in my neighborhood, far from my parents' watchful eyes. We sat at a corner table. He ordered black coffee and a blueberry scone. I ordered a latte and watched him while he stirred sugar into his cup. "Grandpa," I said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Always, sweetheart." "Are you happy? Living with Mom and Dad?" He stopped stirring, looked down at his cup. "They're my family." "That's not what I asked." A long pause. Outside, the October rain was starting to fall, streaking the cafe windows with silver. "No," he said finally. "I'm not happy. I haven't been happy in a long time." "Then why do you stay?" "Where else would I go? I'm 78 years old. I have a small Social Security check and a house that's worth less than the mortgage I took out on it. Your father still hasn't paid back the money I lent him. He keeps saying he will, but..." He shrugged. "I'm not holding my breath." I reached across the table and took his hand. "What if I told you there was another option?" That afternoon, I told him about a place I'd heard about through my nonprofit work. It was called Cedar Grove Senior Living Community, and it was located about 20 minutes outside of Portland in a town called Sherwood. I'd visited several months earlier while researching grant opportunities for elder care programs. The director had given me a tour, and I'd been struck by how different it felt from the institutional facilities I'd seen before. The staff knew residents by name. They had a community garden. They offered classes and concerts and a woodworking shop. It was the kind of place where people went not to wait for death, but to keep living. Grandpa listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Can we go see it?" he asked. We toured Cedar Grove the following week. I watched my grandfather transform as we walked through the halls. He asked questions. He talked to residents. He lingered in the woodworking shop, running his hands over the tools. In the garden, he knelt down and examined the tomato plants with the eye of someone who'd been growing his own food for 40 years. When we left, he was smiling. "I think I could be happy here," he said. "Then let's make it happen." The plan took 6 months to execute. 6 months of secrecy and logistics and quiet conversations. 6 months of watching my family plan a wedding while my grandfather and I planned something far more significant. The first step was legal. I connected Grandpa with an attorney named Diana Conquo, who specialized in elder law. She helped him set up a trust to protect his assets. She drafted documents that gave him full control over his decisions and made it clear that no family member, meaning my father, could contest his choices on grounds of incompetence. The second step was financial. Grandpa's house was worth more than he realized. The Southeast Portland neighborhood he'd lived in for 40 years had become desirable. Young families were buying up the modest mid-century homes and renovating them. A real estate agent told us the house could sell for just under $400,000, even with the remaining mortgage balance. We sold it in 3 weeks. The third step was the hardest. Grandpa had to decide what to do with the money. I didn't want to influence him. This had to be his choice, his vision. I just helped with the paperwork. "Some of it should go to your brother," he said one evening. We were sitting in his kitchen, surrounded by boxes. He was sorting through a lifetime of belongings, deciding what to keep and what to let go. It's tradition. Grandparents give wedding gifts. "Grandpa, they banned you from the wedding." I know. He picked up a photograph of Connor as a child, gap-toothed grin, baseball cap, holding a fish he'd caught at a lake in Central Oregon. But he's still my grandson. I still love him. He set the photo down. I need to do this my way. Not their way. Your way. My way. He wouldn't tell me what he meant. He just smiled, that quiet smile of his, and said I'd understand when the time came. The wedding was set for April 15th at the Portland Art Museum. My mother had been planning it for 18 months. The flower arrangements alone cost more than my annual rent. The guest list included 2 senators, a former governor, and most of the Portland business elite. Charles Beckworth had connections everywhere, and my father was determined to leverage every single one of them. The week before the wedding, I got a call from my mother. Erin, we need to discuss the seating chart. What about it? Your grandfather. We've decided. Well, your father thinks it's best if he sits at a table in the back. With the caterer's staff. He'll still be there. He'll still see everything. It's just. Just what? Just that Charles Beckworth's mother is coming. She's 92 and sharp as a tack. She'll notice if your grandfather starts telling his Navy stories. You know how he gets. He doesn't know when to stop. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles went white. Mom, Grandpa isn't coming to the wedding. What do you mean? He has to come. People will ask questions if he's not there. Then tell them he's sick. Tell them he had a conflict. Tell them whatever you want. You made it very clear he wasn't welcome. He took you at your word. But I have to go. I hung up before she could respond. 2 days before the wedding, Connor called me. He sounded nervous. Hey, Erin. So Mom told me Grandpa's not coming. That's right. Look, I know Dad was harsh, but do you think you could talk to him? Grandpa, I mean. It's my wedding. He's my grandfather. It'll look weird if he's not there. It'll look weird. Yeah, people will wonder. I closed my eyes. Connor, when's the last time you visited Grandpa? Just to visit. Not to ask for something. Silence. I'm busy. You know how it is with the wedding. When's the last time you called him? Just to say hi. I don't know. A few months ago. It was Christmas. You called him on Christmas because Mom made you. Before that, it was your birthday because you were hoping he'd send you money. Erin. Connor, you don't get to ignore him for years and then demand he show up so you don't look bad in front of your new in-laws. That's not how this works. He's my grandfather. He should want to come. He did want to come. Until you and Mom and Dad made it clear he wasn't wanted. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. I was there. He hung up. The wedding day arrived. I went because I felt I had to, because not going would have created more drama than going. I wore the dusty blue bridesmaid dress my mother had picked out. I stood in the museum's sculpture garden while Connor and Tessa exchanged vows under an arch of white roses. I clapped when they kissed. I smiled for the photographs. I made small talk with the Beckworths and the senators and the former governor. All the while, I was thinking about Grandpa. He'd moved into Cedar Grove 3 days earlier. I'd helped him carry his boxes into his new apartment, a sunny 1-bedroom with a view of the community garden. He'd been nervous. His hands had shaken as he arranged his photographs on the windowsill. Eleanor. My father as a baby. Connor and me as children. A life laid out in frames. Are you sure about this? He'd asked. I'm sure. Are you? He looked around the room. Through the window, we could see several residents gathered around a raised garden bed, laughing about something. A staff member was helping an elderly woman in a wheelchair navigate the path. I think I am, he said. At the reception, my father gave his speech. He stood at the head table, champagne glass raised, looking every inch the successful patriarch. He talked about legacy and family and the importance of building something that lasts. He thanked the Beckworths for welcoming Connor into their family. He didn't mention Grandpa Henry. Not once. Midway through the dinner, my mother leaned over and whispered, Did Grandpa send a gift? People are going to ask. I don't know. Did you ask him? We haven't spoken. Your father thinks. Mom, I can't do this right now. Fine. But if he didn't send anything, it's going to reflect badly on us. On us. Not on him. On us. I excused myself from the table and went to the bathroom. I stood in front of the mirror and gripped the edges of the sink and breathed until my hands stopped shaking. The reception ended at midnight. As guests were leaving, my father gathered the immediate family, me, my mother, Connor, and Tessa, and announced that we needed to stop by Grandpa's house. Now, Connor looked exhausted. It's midnight. He didn't come to the wedding. The least he can do is give us his gift in person. Charles Beckworth asked me specifically what Henry had given the couple, and I had to make something up. It was humiliating. You're worried about being humiliated. The words came out before I could stop them. Erin. My father's voice was ice. Not now. We drove to Grandpa's house in a convoy of luxury cars. My father in his Mercedes. Connor and Tessa in his BMW. Me in my 10-year-old Subaru. The streets were empty. The April night was cold and clear. When we pulled up to the house, something was wrong. The porch light was off. The curtains were gone from the windows. The flower boxes that Grandpa had maintained for 20 years were empty. He's probably just asleep, my mother said. My father used his key to open the front door. He fumbled for the light switch. The house was empty. No furniture. No photographs. No grandfather clock that had belonged to my great-grandparents. No worn leather recliner. Just bare floors and bare walls and a single envelope sitting on the kitchen counter. What the hell? My father grabbed the envelope. His hands were shaking as he tore it open. Read it, I said quietly. He read it. Dear family, by the time you read this, I will be settled in my new home. I have sold the house and most of my belongings. After much thought, I've decided to make arrangements for my own future, arrangements that ensure I won't be a burden to anyone. The proceeds from the sale have been allocated as follows. First, I have paid for my care at my new residence for the next several years. I will not need financial assistance from anyone. Second, I have established a fund called the Erin Callahan Elder Care Initiative to be managed by my granddaughter Erin through her nonprofit organization. The initial endowment is $173,000. This fund will support elderly individuals in our community who are facing isolation and lack of family support, people who, like me, have spent too many years feeling invisible. Third, to my grandson Connor and his new wife Tessa, I leave the attached gift. I hope it serves them well. I realize now that I have been a burden to this family. I am grateful for the years we have shared, but I believe it is time for me to step back and allow you to live your lives without the embarrassment of an old man who doesn't fit into your social circles. Erin, my dear granddaughter, my light, my champion. Thank you for helping me find a place where I am valued. Thank you for respecting my decisions. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. You are the best of us. Please continue your important work. I am so proud of you. Please do not try to contact me directly. My attorney, Diana Okonkwo, will handle any necessary family communications. I wish Connor and Tessa every happiness. I'm sorry I couldn't be at the wedding, but I understand why it was better this way. With love, Erin Callahan. The silence that followed was absolute. Then my father exploded. $173,000? He gave $173,000 to some charity? That's our inheritance. He had no right. What's the gift? Connor grabbed at the envelope. What did he leave me? Attached to the letter was a smaller envelope. Connor tore it open. Inside was a photograph, the same one Grandpa had been looking at in his kitchen. Connor as a boy, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a fish. On the back, in Grandpa's handwriting, this is the grandson I remember. I hope you find him again someday. That was it. No money. No check. Just a memory. Connor stared at the photograph. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, anger, and then, just for a moment, something that looked almost like grief. Wait. My mother's head snapped toward me. Erin helped him? You knew about this. I did. You helped him steal from this family? My father's face was purple. You went behind our backs and... He didn't steal anything. My voice was calm. I'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months. It was his house. His money. He earned every penny of it over 38 years at Tektronix. He loaned you $42,000 in 1998. You never paid him back. If anyone has been stealing, it's you. How dare you? No. You're going to listen to me now. I stepped forward. I was shaking, but my voice held steady. For 20 years, Grandpa loved this family. He mortgaged his home to save your business. He showed up for every birthday, every holiday, every school play. He sat through dinners where no one spoke to him. He endured your contempt and your condescension and your constant, grinding dismissal. And last week, you told him he couldn't come to his own grandson's wedding because he might embarrass you in front of the Beckworths. He doesn't understand social situations. He understands perfectly. He's understood everything. He's understood that you've been ashamed of him for years. He's understood that you see him as an obstacle, not a person. He's understood that the only value he had to this family was what he could give you. And when he finally realized that would never be enough, he decided to give to people who actually need it. Connor looked up from the photograph. You should have told me. I could have. What? What could you have done, Connor? You haven't visited him voluntarily in 3 years. You call him when you need money. You don't know anything about his life. When's the last time you asked him about his work? About his garden? About anything? I've been busy. Everyone's busy. Grandpa was busy too. He still showed up. Tessa, who had been standing silently in the corner throughout this exchange, stepped forward. Her face was pale. Connor, is all of this true? Your grandfather was banned from our wedding. It's complicated. It's not complicated. She looked at him with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment, maybe. Or dawning recognition. You told me your grandfather was too ill to travel. I didn't want you to think. I need to go. She picked up her purse. I need to think about all of this. Tessa, please. I'll call you tomorrow. She walked out. Connor stood frozen, the photograph dangling from his fingers. My father pointed at me. You're going to tell us where he is. Right now. No, I said. I'm not. He's my father. I have a right to know. He's a competent adult who has made his own decisions. His attorney will confirm that. If you try to contact him against his wishes, she'll file a restraining order. You wouldn't. Try me. My mother started crying. Not real tears, the performative kind she used at social events when she wanted sympathy. After everything we've done for you, Erin. We raised you. We paid for your education. And you betray us like this. You didn't raise me to betray you. You raised me to have a conscience. That's on you. I walked out of the empty house. Behind me, I could hear my father shouting and my mother crying and Connor saying nothing at all. I drove home. I made a cup of tea. I sat on my couch and looked at the photograph Grandpa had given me, a copy of the same one he'd left for Connor, but with a different message on the back, to Erin, who saw me when no one else did. With all my love, Grandpa. Then I called him. Hello, sweetheart. His voice was warm. Content. How did it go? About how you'd expect. Dad exploded. Mom cried. Connor's wife walked out. I'm sorry about Tessa. She seemed like a nice girl. She is. I think she might be the only one in that family who actually has principles. Give her time. Some people just need to see the truth clearly before they can act on it. Are you okay? Are you settled in? I'm wonderful. Margaret and I played cards this morning. She cheats terribly. I let her win. He chuckled. The chef here makes a meatloaf that's almost as good as your grandmother's. Almost. Grandpa? Yes. I'm so sorry. For all of it. For them. Sweetheart, stop. You have nothing to apologize for. You're the reason I'm here. You're the reason I have a life again. You have nothing to be sorry about. We talked for another hour. When I finally hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the rain and thinking about what family really means. The months that followed were turbulent. My father's business hit a rough patch, a luxury condo development in the Pearl District that had been overleveraged and undersold. Without Grandpa's house to borrow against, he had to liquidate assets. The Mercedes went first, then the golf club membership, then the vacation property in Sun River. My mother had to adjust to a smaller life. The shopping trips stopped. The dinner parties became less frequent. The West Hills house went on the market. They moved into a modest rental in Beaverton. She called me once, sounding lost. Erin, I don't understand what happened. Everything was going so well. Mom, everything was never going well. You just didn't notice. I miss your father. The old version of him. Before all this. The old version is the one who got you here. The new version is just the old version with fewer resources. She was quiet for a moment. Do you think I was a bad mother? I think you were so focused on looking like a good mother that you forgot to actually be one. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Intent doesn't erase impact. She didn't call again for several months. Connor's marriage lasted 11 months. Tessa filed for divorce after discovering that Connor had been hiding significant credit card debt he'd accumulated trying to maintain a lifestyle he couldn't afford. She moved back to Connecticut. He moved into my parents' rental and started working at a car dealership. It was humbling work. It was probably the best thing that could have happened to him. One evening, about 8 months after the wedding, Connor called me. Erin, can we talk? About what? About Grandpa. About everything. I've been thinking a lot lately. About how I was. About how we all were. I'm listening. He told me he'd started therapy. That his therapist had asked him about his relationship with Grandpa, and he'd realized he couldn't remember a single meaningful conversation they'd ever had. He couldn't remember ever asking Grandpa about his life. He couldn't remember ever saying thank you. I was a selfish brat, he said. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want to be different. I want to try. That's a start. Can I see him? Grandpa? I know he said no contact, but do you think he'd let me visit? I'll ask him. I asked. Grandpa was quiet for a long time. He's my grandson, he said finally. I've never stopped loving him. I just stopped hoping he'd love me back. He wants to try. Then let him try. Connor's first visit to Cedar Grove was awkward. He brought flowers. He fidgeted. He didn't know where to sit or what to say. Grandpa let him struggle for a while. I think he'd earned that, and then he reached out and patted Connor's hand. Tell me about your life, son. Not the version you tell everyone else. The real version. Connor started talking. For the first time in his adult life, he was honest about his failures, his fears, his regrets. Grandpa listened. He didn't judge. He didn't lecture. He just listened, the way he'd always listened to me. Afterward, Connor called me. He was crying. He said he was proud of me. For trying. Even after everything. He said he was proud of me. Grandpa's always been like that. I never knew. I never bothered to know. Now you do. He started visiting regularly after that. Not for obligation. Not for money. Just because he wanted to. He started helping with the garden. He started playing cards with Margaret. He started learning who his grandfather actually was. My parents took longer. My father's pride was a fortress with very thick walls. But eventually, even those walls began to crumble. He showed up at Cedar Grove one Sunday without warning. He stood in the doorway of the community room, watching Grandpa teach a woodworking class to a group of residents. Grandpa looked up and saw him, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. Then Grandpa said, "Richard, pull up a chair." My father sat down. He didn't say much that first visit, but he came back the next week, and the next. And slowly, over months, he started to become the son Grandpa had been waiting for his whole life. The Erin Callahan Elder Care Initiative flourished. In its first 2 years, we funded programs at 12 senior facilities across Oregon. We connected volunteers with isolated seniors. We provided grants for art classes and music programs and gardening projects. We helped elderly people who'd been forgotten by their families find community again. Every success story I shared with Grandpa. I'd sit with him in the garden at Cedar Grove, his garden, now the one he'd planted and tended with his own hands, and tell him about the people his gift had helped. "It's everything I hoped for," he said once. "All those years, I thought I had nothing to offer. But now I know that's not true." "You've always had something to offer, Grandpa. You just needed people who could see it." He smiled. The garden around us was in full summer bloom, tomatoes ripening on the vine, zucchini sprawling across the soil, marigolds blazing orange and gold. "You know what the best part is," he said. "I used to be afraid of the future. Every day felt like one day closer to the end of something. But now every day feels like the beginning." Is that a quote from somewhere? It's from me. I'm getting philosophical in my old age. I laughed. "You've always been philosophical." "True. But now I have an audience." He gestured toward the community room, where his friends were gathering for the afternoon concert. Margaret was waving at him through the window. Robert, the retired pilot, was setting up chairs. "Go," I said. "Your public awaits." "Will you stay? Try to stop me." We walked inside together. Grandpa took his seat next to Margaret. The pianist, a student from Portland State, began to play a Chopin nocturne. Grandpa closed his eyes. His face settled into an expression of perfect, uncomplicated peace. I sat in the back and watched him. This man who had spent 78 years being told he wasn't enough. This man who had given everything to a family that gave nothing back. This man who had finally decided to give to himself. He wasn't just surviving. He was thriving. And that, I realized, was the real victory. Not the money, not the fund, not the justice or the revenge or the shocked faces in an empty house. The real victory was this: an old man in a room full of people who saw him, listening to music, knowing he was loved. Family isn't the one you're born into. It's the one that chooses to truly see you. Grandpa Henry taught me that. And if this story reminded you to look around at the people in your life, the ones who show up, the ones who listen, the ones who never ask for anything but your presence, call them. Thank them. Be the family they deserve. I'm Erin Callahan. Thank you for listening. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me about the person in your life who saw you when no one else did. I'll see you in the next one.